I used to just go with whatever meat looked good or was on sale at the grocery store. But now that I've experienced the exceptional quality, flavor, and convenience that you can get from Omaha Steaks, I'm never going back. They can build a custom food plan based on your schedule, which means less food waste and stocking up on high-quality proteins to always have on hand. With Omaha Steaks in your freezer, you're always just minutes away from a quality dinner. Whether it's Taco Tuesday or a weekend feast, taste the Omaha Steaks difference and never settle for grocery proteins again. Get flavorful, high-quality proteins delivered by visiting omahasteaks.com. Plus $35 off when you use promo code YUM at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, code YUM. Terms apply. See site for details. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code YUM at checkout for $35 off. Minimum purchase may apply.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, what I'm going to talk about is we're actually going to take a trip down memory lane, go back a little bit. I'm going to talk about down south, more specifically, what it was like for a young black boy to grow up down south. Now I'm speaking of myself. If you're not familiar, I am grew up in the state of South Carolina. At the time of this recording, I'm 50. So I'm older than a lot of you who are listening. But that's beside the point. But how I came to this, I went back and I was listening to an episode that I did a couple of months ago for Father's Day. It was me, Baylor the Great, shout out to BTG, and Uncle Dolomite from the Too Much Game podcast. And we were talking about fatherhood, and I made mention of, just how I was growing up down south. And they both kind of said at the same time, like, you were lucky. Like, you grew up in an environment that was conducive to you being a kid. And if you're not familiar with Dolomite and Baylor, both of them grew up. Baylor grew up in LA, Dolomite in Compton. And so, vastly different from Florence, South Carolina, where I grew up. And so it got me to thinking about, just kind of going into a little bit more detail in the trip down memory lane as to, what I experienced as a young black boy growing up in the South. Now, I'll be first to admit, like, I wasn't born in South Carolina. I was born in New Jersey. Then we moved to South Carolina when I was 3. But that's where I grew up. And Florence is my hometown. And I stayed there until I went to college at South Carolina State University. And then once I graduated from there, I never moved back home. Of course, moved to Atlanta, and I've been in Atlanta since then. But let's talk about kind of where it started. My early years, the early years were really, really memorable. A lot of fun. As a young black boy, I think one of the first things I can tell you about growing up in Florence was I didn't grow up around a lot of white people. In fact, I don't think, I did have some white neighbors in one neighborhood, but for the most part, I didn't grow up around. I mean, I would see white people at school, and I had, friends that were white. Not a lot, but, a couple. But yeah, it was it was just I stayed in a black area, and when we moved to another black area, and we moved again, we moved to another black area, and I'll explain in just a second. But no, I didn't grow up around white people, so my experiences were always with my people, so it was cool. But that's, I guess, looking back on it, it's probably more of a anomaly um, than it is anything else. Because I think if I had grown up in, I don't know, Mississippi, I probably would have had a different experience. Actually, if I'd grown up in a different part of South Carolina, I probably would have had a different experience. Um, but no, I just, where I grew up, and there, and don't get it twisted. There were white people in Florence. I just didn't grow up around them, and there were none in my neighborhoods. Um, well, the first neighborhood we lived in, um, it's funny because it's actually called the Projects. Now, it ain't, and I mentioned this before in another podcast, and it's worth repeating. When I say projects, it ain't Cabrini Green, it ain't, the Nickerson Gardens, it ain't Jordan Downs, it ain't Queensbridge. It's just these 2-level apartments, and the buildings kind of go side by side or what have you. But it's not, it's not it's not projects as you might think. But it was this place called Mount Zion Apartments, and the apartments are still there. And I mean, I had so much fun. I lived there probably from 3 until I was in the 4th grade. I don't know how old you are in the 4th grade. So anyway, yeah, that's where we lived. And it was a lot of fun because, one, um in the building where we lived, you knew the people, and then like the next building over, my aunt lived there, my grandmother, um, before she passed away in '79, my uncle, um, so we had family there, my cousin, and so like you didn't have to go far to be around family. And I remember, like, if my mom and dad were going somewhere, they take me, and then my brother, my younger brother, they take us over to my grandma, and my grandmother literally lived like 20 feet away. So, um, if she wanted to, if we spent the night, or if she babysat us or something like that. So that was cool. But Mount Zion was pretty much what they call low income housing. Um, I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth, Miss Hawkins. um, yeah, but it was cool, man. The buildings, they were spread out, and then there were some buildings behind, and then right behind our building was this huge grass field. And when I tell you, that grass field became, it was my, it was my playground. It was my Soldier Field. It was my LA Coliseum. It was my Giant Stadium. It was whatever field I wanted it to be, because that's where we played football. We played baseball there. The grass pretty much was always cut. I can remember the grass being cut. But that's where we played at. There was a playground adjacent to the field, but there was a swing, and the little merry-go-round that you get on and spin around until you throw up. But yeah, that's the one game I remember playing a lot. Obviously, was football, as many of you know. Maybe you don't know. I played organized football I started playing organized football at the age of 8, and then subsequently up to high school, and then in college at South Carolina State University. So, that's where the love for football came, on that field. But we played all kind of games, hide and go seek. Oh man, what we played. Okay. We play, and I think we made this game up. We played this game called Roly Poly. Don't laugh. Roly Poly was a version of a baseball game. So basically what you would do is you would, if I was up to bat, you pitch me the ball, I hit the ball, and then I'd run to first base. So you had to, your first base, second base, third base. I'd run to first base. So once I got on first base, then the next person would try to they could try to get you out. Basically, the pitcher could try to get you out. So the pitcher had to, if the pitcher didn't want to pitch to you and they wanted to get you out before even throwing a pitch, you'd have to put the bat down on the plate and they'd have to roll the ball to the bat. If the ball rolls and it hits the bat, you're automatically out. So, if somebody's a great hitter, you don't get a chance to actually bat, because if they roll the ball and it hits the bat, then you're out. And that's how we play. And I don't know. It's funny when I think about it. I don't even know. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this game or how it's played. But yeah, we used to call it roly poly, and we played it. We played it in the grass, but it was really, really effective in the street too, because you're rolling the ball, and it's a tennis ball, not a baseball. You're rolling the ball on gravel, so the ball's going to move. Same for the grass. So if somebody big or somebody tall was coming up to bat and you wanted to get them out, you would try to roll it and hit the bat. But if you didn't, they got a chance to bat and they got a chance to knock in some runs. But like I said, hide and go seek. We played roly poly. We played like every game you could probably think of. I remember distinctly one football game. I was running the ball, and when you're in the, I can't even really call it the hood, but let's, for lack of a better term, in the hood. When you're in the hood, you have to make up your own boundaries. So out of bounds was the clothesline, because in projects you got your clothesline where people hang up their clothes after they wash their clothes, right? So out of bounds was the clothesline. So I ran a kickoff return, and I was running the ball and I got out of bounds, and this dude tackled me. And when he tackled me, my head hit the ground, and my head just so happened to hit where a pipe was slightly sticking up out of the ground. I didn't notice, and he didn't notice either. But when my head hit the ground, it hit the pipe. And when it hit the pipe opened up a gash across my forehead. Probably about as long as your fingernail, but I was probably about 9 or 10. And so I was bleeding and, blood coming down and stuff on my face. And, the kids, ooh, he's bleeding, so I had to go to the hospital. And that was actually the second time I went to the hospital. The first time I went to the hospital, my cousin Tanya came in town. Shout out to Tanya. She came in town from Columbia. And me and Tanya's sister Ijola, all of us were outside playing. And we had an aluminum bat. And we were just swinging the bat. And Ijola was swinging the bat. Ijola and I are the same age. And Tanya's 2 years older than us, I think. And so Tanya got the bat. And Tanya was swinging the bat, but she was swinging and she was turning around in a circle. And as she was turning around in a circle, I did not see her turning around. And the bat hit me, for those of you watching on YouTube, hit me right here within inches of my left eye. In fact, if you zoom in really close, you can actually see the scar still near my eye. I probably at the time didn't know the severity of that, but went to the hospital bleeding. They gave me a little stitch or whatever like that. But I mean, like, it's literally a half an inch from my eyeball. And it hurt. I remember crying. And Tanya was crying. She was like, I'm sorry, cousin. But yeah, that was one of 2 times that I got sent to the hospital playing sports. But I mean, we hung out with our friends. In the projects, I mean, particularly, I love the summertime, because in the summertime, you stayed outside all day. You literally stayed outside all day because you didn't want to come inside. Because if you came inside, they'd probably make you stay inside. So I'd either go to my friend's house or for lunch or something like that, or we'd walk to the store. There was a store. Like, I don't know. Let's just call it 2 blocks away. And the store is called, and I think it's still called this to this day. The store is called the 4-Way Stop. Don't laugh. It's called the four-way stop because at the time that the store was created, it was at an intersection where there was no lights. So it was a four-way stop. So traffic was going four different ways. And so that was the name of the store, the four-way stop. And the store is just a hood convenience store. The surprisingly the store is still there, and I think it's still called the four-way stop. Um, but yeah, the projects was cool, man. It was cool. Made a lot of friends. Um, I had a ball. I mean, like every day was an adventure. And again, these are people who, in theory, we didn't have a lot of money. This was low income housing. I think the rent was like $100. So, and I remember like I ain't gonna say his name, but this one dude, like you didn't want to go to his house because in his house, his apartment, man, they had roaches so bad. I mean, like, and it in the projects, it don't take much for you to have roaches. But like if you had roaches, you gonna have them bad. I remember at one point in time we had some roaches. We didn't have a lot of roaches. But I killed a couple of roaches. I killed a roach or two. But I do remember that when we had those roaches, that was the last year that we lived in the projects. But it was never nothing like roaches in your food or nothing like that. It's just roach on the wall. You knock them off the wall. Or roach run across the floor. You step on them. That type of thing. But there's one kid, and see his house. Oh, I forgot to mention his house smelled too. His house smelled like trash. So, I mean, it was bad. So, I mean, it's just you ain't really want to go over there. So, but yeah, living in the projects was cool, man. It was fun. I remember, like I said, I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about living there was that one, we didn't have a lot, but it seemed like we had everything. But we would just we always were good at making our own fun. And I'll give you case in point. Like I remember a couple of times we get like this heavy rain in the summertime. It rained like at 4:00, and then probably by 6:00, it stopped raining and the sun's back out and it's hot again. And so, but you still have water coming down, in through the sewers or whatever like that. We would race what we call racing sticks. So you get a popsicle stick, right? Break it in half. I get one of my boy Jonathan. And then so we put the popsicle sticks in the stream of water that's running alongside the drain. We're running towards the drain down the street because it was like on a little hill. And we literally would race stick. We put the sticks in the water, and as the water is dry, I mean, of course you had to pick it, you had to pull it out of the water before it went down the drain. But that was kind of fun we had. I mean, we would do things like we take this, there would be spider webs and stuff like that. We take ants. Sometimes like you get those really big, thick black ants. We take those black ants and throw them up into the spider web and let the spiders eat them and just watch. We used to do all kind of crazy shit in the summertime because it was extremely hot. We take a magnifying glass and like, let's say if you got a caterpillar on the ground, you take the magnifying glass and as the sun is beaming down, it's creating heat through the magnifying glass, and you kind of set the in essence killed the caterpillar by overheating him. Don't laugh. We did stuff, but just dumb shit. We had a lot of fun. So that was the first place that we lived. And I was in the 4th grade, and then my parents bought a house. And the house was in a section of Florence called Ponderosa. Ironically, Ponderosa was only, I'd probably say a 3-minute drive from the projects. Like it wasn't far. It still isn't far right now because Mount Zion Apartments are still there and the house in Ponderosa is still there. And so we lived in that house from the time I was in the 4th grade until I was in the 7th grade. And so we went from the transition of being in an apartment to being in a house. And It was dope, man. It was dope. My brother and I, in the apartment we shared a room, and in the house we shared a room because my older cousin Tammy came down from New Jersey, and she lived with us for a year, and she graduated from high school in Florence. She graduated from South Florence High School. But anyway, long story short, it was dope, man. Having your own, you know, house. I had my own yard. I got a dog at one point. And the great thing about it was the elementary school that I went to, which was the same school that I was going to when we lived in the projects. But my brother and I went to a school called McLaurin. McLaurin literally was down the street from my house. Like I literally, if you walked out of my front door, walk down the street, I don't know, 2 minutes. It's a 2 minute walk. When you get to the end of the street, the school is right there. And so like I thought it was dope. So I didn't have to catch the bus to school anymore. Um, I literally could leave if school started 8 o'clock. I literally could leave my house at 7:55 and make it to school on time. I never did. We always went to school early, um, but it was dope, man. I mean, we played in the street. We played football in the street. Uh, this was the one neighborhood where I did have white friends who were neighbors on the street. Was a couple of my neighbors that lived down the street. Shout out to the Caraway boys. There were three brothers, three white brothers, Chris, Alvin, and Johnny. I haven't seen these dudes in years, but they were always cool. They let we they would come in my house, we would go in their house. We always played together. Uh, excuse me, Johnny and I were the same age. Alvin and my brother's 3 years younger than me. I think Alvin and Damon were the same age. And then they had a younger brother named Chris who's like 2 years younger than. Now Chris was the weirdo. Chris was cool as hell, but Chris in the wintertime would be outside barefoot. I mean, it would be 20 degrees, he'd be outside barefoot. And in the summertime, it'd be 100 degrees, he'd have on cowboy boots. I don't know why, but that was Chris. Um, but yeah, in the neighborhood, we play baseball, we play football, we rode our bikes, we jumped ramps. Shout out to King Germ, who talked about jumping ramps on an episode of his podcast. Um, and so we had a lot of fun, man. We were able to do a lot. We walked, we rode our bikes. There were stores that weren't. There was a store that wasn't that far away, so we ride our bikes to the store. Um, you could go to people's houses. And what's interesting was even when we lived in Ponderosa, I mean, a lot of times we left our doors unlocked. Like we never. I don't ever remember like going to school locking the door. Um, and so it was a fun time, and it was like I said, it was cool. It was cool because I was there with my parents and our older cousin Tammy, and then me and my brother, and we had the the American dream life, if you will, until it wasn't. And then my parents got divorced when I was in seventh grade, and so my dad moved out, and so then we had to move. And again, the school I'd gone to elementary school at McLaurin, so that was dope. So I was going to middle school anyway, and so my mom, she did not sell the house. Dad moved out, and then so we moved on the other side of town, moved to the north side. And I moved into an area called Spalding Heights. Um, Spalding Heights. How can I describe Spalding? Spalding Heights was for Florence. I'll say this: it probably upper middle class black people. Not bougie black people, but upper middle class. Some wealthy, some wealthy. We weren't wealthy. Um, we weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either. Um, but yeah, I from seventh grade through high school, that's where I lived in my uncle's house or my aunt's house, I should say. It was me, my aunts, two of my aunts, my mom, and my brother, and that experience there was crazy. I loved it every day. Our street was a very cool street. Everybody on our street, because our street was just like one street. Like there were other surrounding areas of Spalding Heights, but we had this one street. And um we played basketball. We got this huge driveway, so we played 3-on-3 in the driveway. I mentioned before we had a pool. And so swimming, we throw pool party. When I got older, obviously in high school, we throw pool parties. We swim. Summertime, we swim just about every day. But the thing that I used to love to do really was just play basketball with my boys. My boys would come over, and summertime we would hoop every day. And my house, really, I'm gonna be honest, my house was kind of like the hangout house. Like it would be the place where, kids could come over, play video games. We hang out and kick it in the den. We had a huge den, and my mom and them, they wasn't sweating the kids, so it was a place where kids could just come and just kick it and not really, worry about being scrutinized by adults. So like, I'll give you an example. Like I remember one time we were playing ball, and my Uncle Ronnie, rest in peace, was standing outside, but nobody saw him, and somebody missed the shot. Somebody got fouled or something like that, and they was like, "Man, I'm tired of this shit, man. You keep calling these motherfucking bullshit ass calls." And my Uncle Ronnie was standing like right there, and then they didn't see him, and then like we all kind of looked like, "Oh snap, his uncle heard us, heard him cussing." And man, my uncle stood there for a second, and then he just busted out laughing, and we just started laughing. So he was like, "Oh man, that's so funny, man. Uncle Ronnie, man, we sorry for cussing." He was like, "Man, don't worry about that shit." He didn't care. But yeah, living in that house was dope. It's funny because I was telling my son earlier or yesterday, I was telling my youngest son Brandon about how we were one of the few people I know that had 2 house phone lines in the house. And that was big because by the time I got to high school, it was me, my cousin Eric, and my brother in the house. So you got 3 teenage boys. And so, we were all competing for the phone. So like if I got on the phone at 8:00, I'm talking to a girl, I'm talking to my girlfriend or talking to a girl, and then Eric, he might get a phone call. The phone call might come in. I got to click over, then let him talk to whoever he needs to talk to. Then Damon, he'd be on the phone. So, but here's the thing, like the second line in the house was a private number, and we couldn't give that out. But by the time I became a senior, I started giving it out because I was like, look, I can't compete with my brother and my cousin for the phone and my aunt because it was her phone. But yeah, we had a ball. I spent a lot of time in my room, had my own room, and I spent a lot of time in my room listening to hip hop. A lot of time in my room on the phone. I spent a lot of time in my room, and then what was dope was the bathroom was right next to my room. So like, other than, there'd be times where especially if I didn't feel like eating, I wouldn't come I wouldn't come downstairs. But I love that. And the interesting thing is that the house in Ponderosa that I grew up with before we moved, as I mentioned earlier, my mom never sold a house. So my mom actually lives in that house now. And then the house that I spent my high school years at, my aunt and my cousins still live in that house. So the house is still there. So in essence, I have 2 homes to go to when I go to Florence. But it was dope. I think, I couldn't have had a better childhood. I think my childhood was filled with love, filled with fun. We had, some level of privilege, I will say, but we went to, we went places and the thing about it is Florence is a small enough place where everybody knows I won't say everybody knows you, but you don't have to go far before somebody says, well, who are your people? And I mean, you get asked that a lot. And so I would tell someone who my aunt was, or who my mom was, or who my uncle was. And then, oh, okay, I know your uncle. I went to school with him, blah, 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 blah. so forth and so on. Um, because like the high school that I went to and graduated from, Wilson High School, my mom went to school there. My aunts went to school there. My uncles went to school there. So it's like a family thing. So if I had grown up, I mean, if I had, lived in Florence or moved back to Florence after I graduated from college, my kids probably would have gone to school there too. So, um, but no, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I can't stress that enough. Um, did a lot, saw a lot, but ultimately we were able to be kids, and I think that's the thing that you know, Germ and excuse me, Baylor and Dolomite were kind of hinting at when they made the comment was that while you didn't grow up in a glamorous place like L.A., you were able to be a kid. You didn't have to worry about gangs. You didn't have to worry about nobody shooting at you or anything like that. You had to worry about no cops messing with you. And for the most part, all those things happen. I went to a predominantly black middle school, predominantly black elementary school, predominantly black high school, and then a historically black college. So again, I wasn't around, other than going to school, and when you going out in public or whatever to the movies or um, the mall, of course you encounter white people, but for the most part, I didn't really grow up around them. So I think that was, relatively speaking, abnormal for somebody growing up in the 80s and 90s. And then as I got older, I think I got my license when I was 14. No, I got my permit at 14, started driving at 15. We would hang out at the mall, Magnolia Mall, um, record stores. Shout out to Ray's, because I would go hang out at Ray's and buy records and tapes. Um, the bowling alley. We go to the bowling alley. And the cool part about it is not only that like I have my friends, on my street, but my closest friends were all within like um probably a 5-minute walk. So my boy Jay Fresh lived around the corner. Zell lived down the street from Jay Fresh. Jay lived on the corner. Rudy lived across the street from Jay Fresh. My boy Fred lived across the street from Zell. So like my friends, outside of the friends that I had on my street, my friends, were right there. My boy Tutu lived a house down from me. Joey and Ryan lived across the street. And these are still my friends to this day, right? And so, like, it's interesting because I tell people all the time, like, even having a basketball goal in your yard, in your driveway, I couldn't even go out shoot and just practice because if I started dribbling the ball, 2 minutes later, here comes Tutu. 3 minutes later, here comes Ryan and Joey from across the street. So then next thing you know, we got a 3-on-3 in a minute, because fellas are just coming through. And like Sunday afternoons in the summertime, those hoop sessions in my driveway were epic. Legendary, if you will. And then, I mean, if you ask anybody from outside of town, the north side, they'll tell you that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Very little supervision, for the most part. Yeah. And when I think about it, even when we lived in the projects, very little supervision. I mean, like we were able to get outside and move around. And once we got on our bikes, like relatively speaking, we could go a few miles away from the house. As long as you were home, you were home before the lights came on, you were good. I mean, it's not like now. And I mean, we didn't have cell phones, anything like that. So your parents just assumed that, you'd be coming back home. They didn't. I mean, like, I don't even think I've ever told my mom and dad, like some of the places we went, not that we went any place dangerous, but you're crossing over streets and you're riding on your bikes and stuff like that. And, you're probably not as savvy but we were never alone. Like there was never a time where I left my neighborhood, left the projects, went somewhere by myself. That was something that you could not do, boy or girl. You could not leave. Somebody had to be with you. So, if you was going to kidnap me, you was going to have to kidnap me and like 4 other kids. So, but yeah, growing up down south as a little black boy, man, it was everything for me. I marvel at the lives that my children have lived, but at the same time, they've lived a very privileged life. They definitely don't move around like I did. And you know, I can't really say it's been better because we just had a lot of fun, man. We didn't have this technology either. They have this technology. They walk around with their phones in their hands all day. I mean, you know, we got it in on Atari 2600. You know, we got it in on the board games and playing Uno and stuff like that. But, you know, we were at the best place that we could be, outside, because you know what was happening outside? Everything. So, yeah, we were going to play games like Roly Poly. We were going to play, you know, we were going to play 3-on-3 basketball. Or we were going to jump in the pool. I mean, like, we always found ways to do different things, and we always found ways to have fun. And the one thing that I could never say about my childhood that I ever was bored. Never. Because we found a way to have fun. And that's what it was like growing up down south as a little black boy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you feel so inclined, you want to shoot us some money, hey, hit me up on Cash App, $TWELBEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.
Dinner time. It's more than just a meal. It's when work comes to a halt, where macaroni masterpieces are made and little moments turn into lasting memories. With the Blue Cash Preferred Card, you can get 6% cash back at U.S. supermarkets. So you can bring home the flavors that bring everyone together. We did say everyone. Make the special moments even more rewarding. Learn more at americanexpress.com/explore-BCP. Terms and cashback cap apply with Blue Cash Preferred.
Today's tip from the injury law firm Greenberg & Betterman. Too many pedestrians lose themselves in their phones and have accidents when they walk. So don't do it. Greenberg & Betterman is here to help you. Contact gblawyers.com, that's gblawyers.com, and feel better.